So
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
all we just did is going to be on exam 1?
All we just did, and I have some more today, but what I've been doing every time that we meet, if you haven't noticed, I've been taking some things from the old stuff and putting in the WebAssign again, so that it's not really as overwhelming as it probably seems, because you've been seeing some of it several times. So I want to show you what's happened with that, because the progress of this class has been really great. I want to also thank everybody for the notes that you sent me. You're a very kind class, very understanding, and I really appreciate all the notes that I got over the weekend. It was nice to see that. And it was also nice for me to see you guys getting it. I see you learning. I can actually see it from the kinds of texts I get, from what you say to me in class, and the amount of work that you're trying, and I see that. I think we're very far from the first day of class. Think back to the first day of class and where you are now. So it's getting there. A little bit more every time. I'm always going to ask more. I can't help it. I'm greedy. Okay, so what's going to be on the exam? I'll give you more detail as we go along, as I format it. I can't make a promise, but I might send you out a template so you can see what the rubrics look like. But all problems from the previous quizzes, something from an old WebAssign, you know, I haven't asked any where the limit goes to 1, for example. I might ask something like that. And some targeted problems from today. So that, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I want to show you something that I generally see in my classes. And if you go look at most math classes and look at the population-wide kind of scores, the grades start to go down because the material is getting harder and harder. In my classes, it's the reverse. The grades go up. So that's because you get to see it again and again, and you start mastering what you're doing. So this is what I always call mastery. Have you mastered it? So some of you came in here and told me, well, I was fine with the WebAssign, but when you started doing that thing with the tables in class, I had no clue anymore. Well, then I asked you, I might have asked you, well, what would happen if someone woke me up at 3 in the morning and asked me either the WebAssign or the table thing? Do you think I could do it? And do you think I could do it because I'm smarter than you? Because I'm not. I'm telling you right now, I'm not. The fact is, I can do it because I've mastered it. My son told me the same thing. He got a 70 on a test, and he said, I just had a really bad day. And I said, do you think if they shook me awake in the bed at 3 in the morning and slapped me around a bit and said, take your test, if I couldn't knock 100 on that thing? He said, well, of course you could. So that's the difference between mastery. And you haven't mastered it. If you have a bad day, you haven't mastered it. So I'm asking you for mastery. And that links up two things. It links up the procedural part. Some of you are very good at the procedural part. And it also links up the concept part, so you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, what the big picture is, it doesn't matter what people ask you because you'll know how that problem twists and turns. If you know the procedural part and have command of it, you have what you call fluency. So you're able to kind of, it's the ability to dribble well. Ever see someone who can dunk that can't dribble well? I don't know if there's basketball players in here, but there's people sometimes that practice their trick, but they can't dribble well. Well, you can just steal the ball from them and they're ineffective on the court. So you need both. You need procedural and the concept, and they come together. In our class, we have a wide variety. Some of you are really decent at the procedural part, and some of you are knocking that concept part dead. So what we need to do on Wednesday is mix you up so that in every group there's someone that knows their difference of squares, formulas, knows all the formulas and where they go, and there's also someone else in the group that knows the concept, so that we even out and everybody's scores start to climb up to 100. I told you I'm greedy. I like to see the 100. So what you're looking at here is, I don't know which section this is, one of the sections, but you're looking at the improvement from Quiz 1 scores. And look at how many hundreds there are on Quiz 2. There were hundreds on Quiz 1 also. So in my class, students can get hundreds because I tell you what's going to be on there, and if you really work at it, you should be able to knock out 100. So if you're trying to ride a curve, I have never curved. Never. I've been teaching since 1991. I've never had to curve. That's because some people are always going to get hundreds. And I know some of you are doing absolutely nothing because I can see it on what I'm getting back. I can see it from what you're doing, like you're coming in here dry and saying, serve me. It's not going to work. It might work. You might have been able to ride the curve in someone's class where they weren't providing that kind of support, but it won't work here. So there's good news is there's still time. See how much people have improved? Look at this. These are 6% down here. Somebody got 6% and then got 100 the next time. You see that improvement? That's going to continue. You're going to see all these lower levels ones jumping to hundreds. And so that, you can't ride the curve. You have to get with the program and then slide your grade up. It's a limit. This is the other section. You see the same phenomena in both sections. Lots of hundreds. I think we had about 20 hundreds out of both sections. It's a lot of hundreds. And quiz 2 was harder than quiz 1. So I do want to mention something about WebAssign as well. In WebAssign, some of you have been looking at the answers that you get in there and saying, okay, I know how to do it because I saw the answer. I just want you to know who makes those answers. Those are graduate students who may have been put in a classroom and had a terrible time in that classroom and was assigned to make those answers. They don't know about your learning or understanding. They're just making answers. So they're going to do each problem their own funky way. Usually it's someone who's not from the United States that makes that, because usually if you tank in the classroom as a grad student, it's because you have an English problem. So there's some Russian grad student who wrote up your answer books on the WebAssign. It's not anything to learn from. It's not like you can't look at that and get a clue and an idea, but don't try to memorize what's there, because everything they do, sometimes you can tell by looking at it, this is not American math. You can see the way they did it, it's like, wow, that's a weird way to do it. Somebody was showing me something today on the limit problem, the analytical part of the limit that they got from WebAssign. Like, that's a really bizarre way to do it. I think it's Russian. It just didn't look like the way somebody teaches in America. So I just want you to know that, because if you get WebAssign but can't fill out the X1, X2, Y1, Y2, then you really don't know what you're doing. You've memorized somebody's work from WebAssign. That's it. The X1, Y1, X2, Y2 are key. That's the whole idea behind everything. So on the exam, if you can't fill that part out, I'm not going to give you credit for any of the rest of the problem. Because so what? You showed me something that the Russian grad student put on WebAssign. That's nothing. That's a waste of time. I want to make sure you understand all the pieces and how they come together. We're talking about the first exam that's pulling things together. So if you have time, so if you're like, I never understood you when you put that X1, Y1 business down, I can sit with you. The tutor can sit with you. We can show you this. You can come on board. You can be the next 100 that's up there. I'll keep showing you those slides so you'll see that this happens, that everyone eventually, most of the class rises up to 100. You like that, right? Hundreds? You put it on your fridge. In the village, if you live in the village, you can put it on your fridge. You guys share a fridge? Say, my stuff's going on the fridge. You guys can put your math stuff in the garbage. Mine's 100. The hundreds are going up there. I try my best to discourage memorizing on exams, and I didn't really realize that until I took a look at some of the other exams in Calc A. I was concerned because you guys have to take a common midterm. So I was looking at some of the other exams and they were just, take the limit, do this, do that. So I noticed that on my things look quite different, because I ask you sometimes questions, like the question about the Krusty the Clown question. What was the answer to that? Good or bad?
Bad.
Bad, really bad. Why was it bad?
Too far away.
It's too far away. The whole point is you're trying to approximate at 2. Everybody got 2, right? Something around 2. You got a number. You're trying to approximate around that number. If you're 20 away, it's too far away. So that was, if somebody understood that, they understood the point. And it doesn't take you that long to answer that question. So I put some of those questions on. I also put more points allocated to understanding. Like if you put the 2 points correct on the slope, I give you more credit for that, because you really understand what's going on. So you might have made an error in the procedure later on, and if you got your quizzes back and you looked at it, sometimes I gave you no points off for just a minute error like that. It's not a big deal. There's a lot of check work problems. So when you do a tangent line, I ask you to graph it, and then I ask you, is it really the tangent line? Did you get it right or not? So this is this problem right here, back here. So I ask those not just for you, so that you can see it and go, oh, I made a mistake. If you made a mistake and it doesn't look like a tangent line, don't say that it did. You get credit for saying it didn't. So on your quizzes, if you said that it did look like a tangent line when it didn't, you didn't get credit for it. Or if you faked it and took the 2 and made it look like a tangent line even though it isn't, you don't get credit for that. You get credit for telling the truth and saying, look, I must have done something wrong because it doesn't look like a tangent line. That to me is insightful. And that's reality. You've seen me backpedal and go, oh, I must have made a mistake. That's reality. There are people that spend a lot of time with lecture notes to make sure there's no errors, and they proofread it, and they spend hours on it, and they put that drivel up on the board. That's not reality. Reality is everybody makes mistakes on their math. It happens. You know, and even in the lab, I'm sure people make mistakes, and they have to. In fact, Dr. Molina was telling us that when he was doing some of his fertility experiments, they had to redo some of them. So it was really time consuming because they made mistakes. So even in the lab, they're making mistakes. Happens. And I also ask you to follow through. Do this, do this. Do they connect up? Do you get the same answer? So you'll see that. And I ask you to give that. It's so that not just that you're triangulating, but it shows me that's almost the point where I say, oh, they didn't get it. That's where I kind of see it sometimes. And that's when I revamp and start doing something different in here. Are there any questions on that? I'm going to move to the WebAssign next so that we have that done, and then I'll show you the cool stuff. I want to show you the cool stuff first, but it took a lot of time in the other class. And then